Putting crops into cars was the idea behind the first generation of biofuels aimed at reducing CO2 emissions. However, this led to a global food crisis, with land being cleared for fuel rather than food. The EU is now working to reverse this trend.
L'idée, c'est de passer à des agrocarburants dits de deuxième ou de troisième génération qui utilisent soit des déchets, soit une partie non alimentaire des plantes. Je pense que là, il y a un modèle de développement économique extrêmement intéressant qui peut permettre à la recherche-développement de trouver des véritables débouchés et de développer l'industrie européenne.
In Scotland, they're developing a way of getting from A to B on whisky. Think of Scotland, and whisky instantly springs to mind. This iconic industry is worth 4.6 billion euros to the economy, but it comes at a huge cost to the environment. It is one of the most energy-intensive industries. No figures exist for its carbon footprint, but now they're making efforts to cover their tracks. Here at Tullibardine Distillery, only about 3% of all the products that go through the whisky distillery process end up in the bottle that you buy. The remaining 97% ends up as waste, which have to be discarded at a cost of €293,000 per year. So it makes economic and environmental sense to turn their whisky green. The malt whisky process has changed little in over 200 years. It involves just 3 ingredients: water, barley and yeast.
What that stuff is pot ale, which is basically water with a lot of dead yeast in it. And that's another waste product, and it goes out into tanks outside. And a road tanker comes along and takes that away. The draff up there goes to a local dairy farmer who feeds his cows with the draff. This stuff gets sprayed back onto the fields with other chemicals added to it.
The whisky industry has a tradition of recycling its waste for fertiliser and animal feed. But this man had another idea for meeting renewable energy targets.
I'd love to say I had a lying in the bath eureka moment and a lovely story to tell you about drinking a dram of whisky and having inspiration, but it was really a simple matter of looking to see where was the biggest source of raw material that we could tap into and derive value where there was no value.
The Biofuel Research Centre in Edinburgh took a 100-year-old scientific process to produce biobutanol, a next-generation biofuel, and adapted it for whisky.
When you've malted the barley, you're left with this material, and also when you distill off the alcohol, you're left with the distillate from the copper stills. So we developed a process where we combine this liquid material with this solid material and make a new raw material that we re-ferment with different organisms that produce high-value chemicals, including this, which is butanol. So we're aiming to produce something like this, which is a fermentation vessel, and this will be done at much, much larger scale in industry than we have done in the lab.
Biobutanol can be put directly into cars and has 25% more energy per unit volume than bioethanol, which was the favoured biofuel until recently. Advanced biofuels could meet up to 4.3% of the UK's 10% renewable transport fuel target by 2020 and save 3.2 million tonnes of CO2 each year. It's the equivalent of taking nearly 1 million cars off the road. Celtic Renewables is the company that hopes to capitalise on the lab's research.
The business model is to take 2 very low-value commodities or residues and convert them into 5 or 6 much-needed high-value commodities that the UK is currently importing. So there's as much acetone imported into the UK as there is whisky exported. Biobutanol is an advanced generation biofuel that the country needs to meet its biofuel targets.
Scaling the 5-litre lab model up to a 10,000-litre working plant incurs costs into the millions. Celtic Renewables are in talks with Tullibardine Distillery and larger companies such as Diageo to take their project to the next level. Here in Leith, beside the old Whisky Bond storehouses, we spoke to the director of Friends of the Earth Scotland, who explained why whisky makers are cleaning up their act.
I think there's a whole range of factors. I think European regulation is part of it, and probably water regulation was the first one to really make them think, hang on, we better take this environment stuff pretty seriously. But I think also the high cost of fuels, and I think some consumer pressure, because people are looking in a premium product for the green credentials there.
Whisky is a serious business in Scotland, and customers are always on the lookout for the latest trend.
I am a whiskey drinker, and I guess any kind of, as a whiskey drinker, you're interested in many different aspects about every whiskey. With whiskey, any kind of story behind any distillery is a good story to tell to the customer if they want to ask about whiskies.
Celtic Renewables hopes to have plants operational by the end of this year, so soon whiskey drinkers can enjoy their favourite tipple with a clearer conscience.